Happy Thanksgiving and welcome to 21st Sports recap and reaction for the Philadelphia Eagles at the Detroit Lions in their Week 12 matchup played November 26, 2015, and this is the first of 3 games on Thanksgiving. So we're going to go over every score and the stats and give our breakdown and analysis of this game. And on the very first possession of the game, the Eagles actually drove down into field goal range, but then a missed 50-yarder would end up with keeping the score tied up at 0 as Caleb Sturgis hit the right upright. So then after both teams would go 3 and out on their next possessions, the Lions would put the first points on the scoreboard with just over 2 minutes left in the first quarter. Matthew Stafford hit Theo Riddick for an 8-yard touchdown. Matt Prater added the extra point, and it was 7-0 Detroit over Philadelphia. So that would be the only score in the first quarter. Then in the second quarter, Mark Sanchez would get the Eagles on the board when he hit Brent Selleck for a 2-yard touchdown. Sturgis added the extra point, and this game was tied at 7. So now the Lions, their next possession, they would end up with a 2-yard touchdown pass by Stafford to Golden Tate, and that was with about 8 minutes left before halftime. Prater hit the extra point, and it was now 14-7 as the Lions were back in the lead by a touchdown. So now the Eagles would end up having to put the ball back to Detroit, and the Lions now in their next possession would end up with a field goal as Prater would hit a 48-yard field goal, and it was now 17-7 as the Lions continue to score, and they were up by 10 points now with about 5 minutes left before halftime. And then after getting the ball back on their next possession, Matthew Stafford hit Calvin Johnson for a 25-yard touchdown pass. Prater had the extra point, and it was 24-7 at the half. So the Lions just kept scoring. Once they started scoring, they kept scoring as they scored on their last 4 possessions of the first half. And then in the second half, they ended up putting some points on the board with a long drive, almost 8 minutes to start off the second half, as Stafford would hit Megatron Calvin Johnson Jr. for a 4-yard touchdown. Prater had the extra point, and it was 31-7. Now Ziggy Ansah would sack Sanchez and force him to fumble on the Eagles' next possession, and so now the Lions would get the ball back, and Matthew Stafford would then hit Calvin Johnson Jr. once again, this time a 3-yard touchdown pass, their third time connecting, Stafford's 5th touchdown pass of the game. Prater had the extra point, and it was 38-7 Detroit over Philadelphia. So the Lions just rolling in this one. And on their next possession, it will be the first time they would punt the ball since early in the first quarter, their first possession of this game. So they went 6 straight possessions scoring in this game. And then Joique Bell would end up scoring on a 1-yard touchdown run after he had almost scored on the play before. So he had a big play to set that up. But with this touchdown and with the extra point, it was now 45-7. So the Lions just rolling all over the Eagles in this one, totally dominating them. And then with about 3 minutes left to play, Sanchez would get Philadelphia back into the end zone when he hit Jordan Matthews for a 24-yard touchdown. Sturgis added the extra point, and it was 45-14. So that would end up being the final score as the Lions run away with this one. They won by 31 points as they just dominated on Thanksgiving. And now these two teams are actually both 4-7. The Lions, of course, winning their 3rd straight game. They're now actually 500 at home. So they're 3-3 at home, 4-7 on the season. And the Eagles are now 4-7 with the loss, 2-4 on the road. And Philadelphia, if they had a chance to be up on the top of their division a couple weeks ago, but now after losing the last couple games, they are down in the basement. And if Dallas wins today, of course, they're going to have their work cut out for them, but if they do, they'll be tied with the Eagles. They're in the NFC East in last place. Of course, the Giants are in first in the East. And in the North, you have the Packers and the Vikings tied. In Detroit now 4-7. Depending on what happens with Green Bay and Chicago later on tonight, if the Packers win, it's in Lambeau Field. They sure should take care of business. I mean, nothing's a sure thing, but more likely than not, Chicago and Detroit will be tied by the end of the day. So the Lions getting a big, big win. Stafford having a big game as they definitely put on a great performance for the hometown fans. And the Lions tend to come to play on Thanksgiving. And in this game, Stafford, 27 for 38, 337 passing yards, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. So the Lions scored 6 touchdowns in this game. The other one coming by Joique Bell, who had 7 carries for 25 yards, including that touchdown. Bell also had 2 receptions for 57 yards in this game, which gave him 77 total yards. And Amir Abdullah was the leading rusher with 16 carries for 63 yards. He also had a reception for 12 yards, which gave him 75 total yards on the day. Megatron Calvin Johnson Jr. had 8 receptions for 93 yards and 3 touchdowns, as he was Stafford's favorite target in this game, as he has been many times in the past. And Theo Riddick with 5 receptions for 62 yards and a touchdown. He also had 2 carries for 6 yards, which gave him 68 yards on the day. And Golden Tate with 7 catches for 50 yards and a touchdown as well. And for the Eagles, Mark Sanchez, 19 for 27, 199 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He did have that fumble when he got stripped by Ziggy Ansah, who ended up with 3.5 sacks on the day. Sanchez was sacked 6 times in total by the Detroit Lions defense. Barner actually was the leading rusher for Philadelphia. Well, he was tied with Murray. They both had 30 yards. Barner did it on 7 carries. DeMarco Murray had 14 carries for 30 yards. And Murray did not have a reception. Barner did have a reception for 1 yard. But Jordan Matthews, 3 receptions for 60 yards and a touchdown, was the leading receiver for the Eagles. We look at the kicking. Prater, 1 for 1 on the field goals, 6 for 6 on the extra points. Sturgis, 0 for 1 on the field goals, 2 for 2 on the extra points. And on defense, Ezekiel Ansah, 3.5 sacks and a forced fumble for the Lions. Tapp also had a sack, as did Tulloch, and a half sack for Taylor as well. And for the Eagles, Curry had 2 sacks. When we look at the team stats, and the Lions had twice as many first downs in this game, 28 first downs for Detroit, 14 for Philadelphia. The Lions had 22 first downs through the air. We look at third down conversions, 5 for 10 for the Lions, 50%, 6 for 14 for the Eagles, 42%, and total net yards, 430 for Detroit, 227 for Philadelphia. On the ground, the Lions netted 108 and the Eagles 68, and through the air, the Lions netted 322 yards. Stafford was sacked twice, losing 15 yards. And Philadelphia netted 159 through the air. Sanchez was sacked 6 times, losing 40 yards. The defense was putting on the pressure big time. They were really getting after the quarterback, showing what they can do. But let's look at the penalties. 4 penalties against Detroit for 29 yards. 2 penalties against Philadelphia for 30 yards. So half as many penalties, but they had 1 more penalty yard. And the Eagles did have that 1 fumble. As I said, Ziggy Ansah with that strip on the sack. And in the red zone, Detroit 6 for 6 in the red zone, 100%. The Eagles were also 100% in the red zone, but they only made 1 trip, 1 for 1. And the time of possession, 37 minutes, 11 seconds for the Lions, 22 minutes, 49 seconds for the Eagles. And that has been somewhat of a trend this year with the Eagles and with the offensive style that they play, very up-tempo. But they haven't really been getting much results. But the Lions just running away with this one. They were firing on all cylinders. The Lions showing the type of team that I thought they could be going into the season, but they had a really rough schedule starting off early on. They lost a lot of close games. And of course, they had some turnover there in their front office as they ended up getting rid of some of their coaches. Of course, Caldwell is still at the helm, and the Lions here on Thanksgiving showing what they can do with the talent that they have, is they are a very talented team. Stafford, I don't care what anyone says, I think he is one of the top quarterbacks in this league. He's shown in the past what he can do. I mean, he's thrown for over 5,000 yards in a season before. Yes, he does have a lot of interceptions, but that's going to happen when you're making those tough throws. He throws a lot of touchdowns, and in this game, no interceptions. He had 5 touchdowns. This is the Matthew Stafford that I expect to see. At least you're not going to have these games every week, but this is the type of performance that he's definitely capable of. And this is why, he is the guy there in Detroit and throwing for over 300 yards as well. And of course, the defense really shining. They had a lot of changeover in that defense as well in the offseason, and they also have been without some of their leadership. As DeAndre Levy is not there, but they came up big in this game. Ziggy Ansah, of course, definitely shining with those 3.5 sacks, and of course with that forced fumble, but all around, up and down the defense, playing exceptionally well. Tulloch also getting a sack, and Tapp as well, and Taylor, but just really up and down the defense, they're doing an excellent job in the secondary, and and in the linebacking core and up front, as they just were dominating. Of course, they're dominating up front on the line in the trenches, and they were really bringing the pass rush. They were all over Sanchez all game. They were also shutting down the run. I mean, they were in the backfield. They were tackling, the runners for the Eagles. Of course, they were without Ryan Matthews once again in this game, but still they're just shutting down Murray, shutting down Sproles, shutting down Barner. Every time they tried to run the ball, it seemed like there was 2 or 3 Lions there to stop the run behind the line. And as you see, Murray just 30 yards off 14 carries, pretty abysmal. And the Lions just doing an excellent job, like I said, on both sides of the ball, on defense and on offense. Not really a big performance per se out of that backfield, but, they had a group effort, and Amir Abdullah did, get his work in. A lot of the runs coming, of course, once the Lions were already well ahead in this game, and they were just looking to kill the clock. Of course, that's what ended up with their first punt in the second half there, after they had scored on 6 straight possessions going back to their second possession of the game. Of course, they punted on their first possession, but Detroit really rolling on the Eagles, and things are looking rough in Philadelphia. You can only wonder how long Chip Kelly is going to be there, as he's definitely on the hot seat. And Caldwell, he was on the hot seat, but he's been getting those wins. They continue to win. Anything's possible. This season's not over yet. They still have 5 more games to play. You never know. They start out with a really tough schedule. They could turn things around. Stranger things have happened, but we'll see how the rest of the season goes. But as for today, the Lions definitely have something to celebrate, and the fans there in Detroit. Of course, the Eagles, it's another one of those years the Eagles fans have become accustomed to, as they almost, year in, year out, the Eagles give the Philly fans something to boo. But let me know what you think in the comments section below. Definitely interested to read your thoughts and opinions. Thank you very much for listening. It's greatly appreciated. I hope you're having a happy Thanksgiving. I know I eat a lot of turkey. My belly's very full right now. And I'm going to eat some more turkey later. Gotta let this settle. I still got to hit the pies. Have not had any pie, but I'm definitely eyeing some pumpkin and apple pie for sure. And who knows, maybe even some other pies. But let me know what you thought about this game. And even let me know what kind of pie you're eating if you want. That's up to you. But thank you very much for listening. It is appreciated, as I said. And I hope you're having a good week and you had a good day and are enjoying Thanksgiving. And I hope you enjoyed all the sports.